So welcome everyone to the Hemophilia Council of California's Advocacy and Public Policy webinar, The Power of Lobbying, Demystifying the Process and Using Your Voice to be Heard. We thank you for joining us today. We are so excited to have you here with us today to learn more about the legislative process and how you can advocate for yourself and for the bleeding disorders community here in California. And I do want to give another opportunity for discussion and questions if folks have thoughts or ideas that they would like to share. And then we also have registration open right now for our virtual legislative day, which will be, the actual legislative day will be April 14th, but we'll have some activities leading up to that. I think, Myesha, you spoke really well to the importance of sort of organizing ourselves before those meetings. And so part of what we have planned is, a webinar on that Monday, which will help everyone be understanding of the issues that we're planning to speak to and make sure they're filled in on those things. And then on Tuesday, have each of the groups that are going to be taking meetings as a team have a practice session time so that they can get together and they can kind of outline, okay, how are we going to, what is the flow going to be? Who's going to share their story? Who's going to take this part and that part so that they can kind of have that organization prepared. Because I think one of the things that we learned is, typically in a real life in-person legislative day, you have that time in the hallway as you're walking to your meeting to get yourself organized. For example, you don't necessarily have that on Zoom. You all pop in there and all of a sudden then you're in and you don't know who's supposed to talk. And it's even a little more awkward sometimes picking up those cues from one another on Zoom, right? So, we have some time set aside for that before our meetings on the 14th. And then we have some upcoming policy summits. So want to throw it out there for folks. Does anyone have any questions for Alex or for Myesha about their experience in the Capitol, specifically about what they talked about today in terms of understanding the process and how to prepare yourself to go in and lobby? But maybe you have an interest in working in the Capitol and you want to know, how did they get there and how did they find their way to their jobs or anything like that you want to ask. So now would be the perfect time to unmute and ask your question if you have one, or type it into the chat. Anyone has any questions for us? Or any thoughts that either of you want to add?
I had one more thing that I wanted to add, and it was it was a while ago. So I was working as a legislative aide, taking meetings like this, and they had me bouncing, but it was like one meeting would end, next meeting would start, and it was there were frequently no breaks between them. And so I just remember one where I was meeting with some cattle ranchers who were having some issue with cattle branding regulations from the Department of Agriculture. And they didn't really have an ask. I wasn't really sure what they were what they were asking for. And we immediately roll into the next meeting, and I will never forget it, because this guy says, well, I'm here to talk to you about bot stots. Now, you know about bot stots, right? I mean, everybody smart knows about bot stots. And if you know me, I mean, I would usually be like, no, I have no idea what a bot stot is, but it was, that I am a human. I have pride. And so I was like, well, yes, of course I know what a bot stot is. And I swear it was a 15-minute meeting, and it took me 10 minutes to figure out bot stots are those reflective things that separate lanes of traffic, like the white and the orange. I had no idea what the guy was talking about for 10 minutes until I could figure out what he was talking about. So, I mean, just that keep in mind, they're humans, they're people, and if you can help people understand, so good, much appreciated.
That's a totally valid point. I'd also say, and I'll answer your question, Andrea, I would say also have a leave behind, right? Which is a lot harder when we're not in person, but make sure, that's why you need to get, the email address, right? For the staffer, make sure you have something you can email them, whether it's a fact sheet for the piece of legislation you're discussing, or just a general fact sheet information, upcoming events, right, that you're interested in promoting for the legislator to, virtually attend, make sure you have that leave behind, because it's just another reminder, right? It brings the issue up to the top of that person's email box, and helps them, remember the conversation. And in terms of your question, how do these meetings affect legislation? People remember. They remember the stories. And I can't tell you how many times I've heard from legislators, well, here's what people in my district are saying. And it could be that they talked to one person at a coffee they did, or virtual coffee now, right? But they heard a compelling story. And then they use that because they don't necessarily have personal, experience with the issue, right? But they use that as their kind of personal experience. And that's how they go forward. So then when they're talking to legislators, they say, well, what about these folks? Or what about this issue, this program? Here's why we need to save it, right? So that's how these meetings are impactful. You are putting a face and a true voice to something that will not be as compelling if they read it in the newspaper or read it on a website, right? They can look at, Hemophilia Council and see like our mission and our vision, and they're like, okay, that's great. But when they hear from you and you say, here's why this is important to me and to my family or to my friend or to the folks, that I'm representing today, that's what really sticks with them. So that's why these meetings are important, and how they impact then, either legislation that a member will carry or co-author, or how they'll vote on that legislation.
Right.
And
And
I-
I could just add that we do these legislative visits, and now they're virtual visits every year. And some people say, well, why do we keep doing this? Well, one of the reasons is that hemophilia is a rare condition. Most people have never even heard of it, let alone can they spell it or tell you what it is. And we have turnover of legislators, not so great now because they have longer term limits, but members that might come in and work on agricultural issues might end up later on the health committee. And so perhaps that, they've been there a while, but they haven't really had to interface with our community. So every time you come in and you tell your story of your rare bleeding disorder, whether it's hemophilia or von Willebrand or another rare bleeding disorder that fits into our mission, you are educating those staffers and those legislators, and they want to help you. They get a lot of negativity, whether it's in social media or the press, and people always have bad things to say about legislators. So the legislators really want to be there to help. They are elected into office by all of you. And it's a feel good when they can help the council and they can do something productive to help people in the bleeding disorders, rare disease community. We do a lot with the state budget process. A lot of the programs that provide medical treatment and services to our community come through the Department of Healthcare Services, the Health and Human Services Agency, Department of Managed Healthcare. So we do a lot of behind the scenes work, and that's also important to educate the staffers and legislators. So we have a lot that goes through the state budget process. We also support key bills. We will be training you through Lynn and her team in the next coming weeks so that you will be well prepared for the legislative day. But it's just so important to remember the key points that Myesha and Alex shared today, which is telling your story and, just be yourselves, and we'll help guide you with the difficult descriptions of the bills and the budget pieces. You just tell your story. How do the treatment programs that provide medical care for you get you your factor or your other medications? How does that impact you on a daily basis? That's what the legislators love hearing from the staffers as well.
So that is a perfect roll in to our upcoming webinars. So Myesha talked about telling our stories, and that's what we're going to be taking a look at in our next month's webinars. Is we're actually going to be doing a workshop, a two-part workshop on the art of telling your story and helping folks to really craft a story. And then how do you boil it down to key points when you only have a short amount of time to share it with a legislator, or you get in an elevator with somebody and they say, what's hemophilia or what's von Willebrand's disease, and you have an opportunity to share with them about your bleeding disorder, about a family member, or this issue that's important to you. So we're going to be doing that, and we hope that you'll be able to join us for those workshops and get further prepared for Legislative Day in that way. And we just want to say thank you again to Myesha and to Alex and to Terry for joining us today. I think this was a really great preparation for helping to prepare folks for our upcoming events and being better advocates. I also just want to take a moment to thank the sponsors of our public policy and advocacy webinar series, Takeda in BioMarin, HF Healthcare, and Sanofi Genzyme, who have helped to support this series and the work that the council does in patient advocacy. So thank you guys so much, and we appreciate you joining us today. And again, we'll have this webinar available up on our website shortly so that folks can come back and view it if you want to be reminded of the ideas that you heard today. And again, thank you so much to our speakers today and to all of you for joining us. Thank you so much, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye.
Great. Thank you. Bye.